Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Colin. With me as always is my brother Brendan. Together we make movies with DBS Films. In today's episode, we are going into a scene-by-scene breakdown of our newest feature film that came out last Friday. When you are listening to this, you can go ahead and take a look at The Forest of Death, now live on Amazon. Again, if you go ahead and rent it, buy it, give us a review, that means the world to us. Be sure to also go ahead and take a look at our Discord channel online because we make movies for our fans with our fans. And if you want to be part of the action on set with us, well, that is the place to be. So scene by scene breakdown, I actually really enjoy these podcasts. We basically go through the movie scene by scene, giving you guys a little update. We're probably going to do it over the course of the next 4 episodes. So if you don't want any spoilers, you're going to have to go ahead, turn this off right now, go watch The Forest of Death, and then come back in and tune in and see what we think. We give you a little bit of insight on what it was like making that scene, our original idea, how we think it turned out, and everything there. So, we're coming hot off of a launch. We were rolling it out. Amazing shout out to the Discord channel for the Forest of Death launch team. They absolutely crushed it, and hopefully we'll continue to trend on the algorithm. So fingers crossed for that. But in this episode, we kind of go, over in detail. And I have to say, just like you probably were watching it over and over and over again during the launch week, I'm really impressed in this final project. It's always something where I feel like once we do release it and get it out there and you do watch it, it becomes a lot more enjoyable once you kind of pass the baton and finally get to it. I remember Girl in Cabin 13 specifically. I was so done watching that movie, but then when we finally rewatched it after it was released, I was like, you know what? This is a really good movie. So what are kind of your feelings now that it's been out there and you can't change anything?
Yeah, it was interesting watching it because I had not watched the movie since I think I gave it to the distribution company in January. So I hadn't watched this movie for the last 3 months, up until I think it was Saturday morning, when I got the text that it was out, and I turned it on, watched it to make sure it's always good, because it's always scary when I don't know the final passover with the distribution team and quality control. They do change things and they do fix things up. So always am nervous to see if anything, major has been changed. But I did watch it. And, when you're watching it the first time after it's on these streaming platforms, you want to see if there's any kind of compression issues or kind of quality issues with it. But once you kind of get halfway through it, towards the end of it, and everything's fine, it is kind of a nice experience. It is extremely difficult to finish a project, go from start to finish, and upload it on a channel. And we always say that's the most important thing, is to get it up on some kind of channel, whether that's Amazon, whether it's Apple TV, whether it's Tubi, or whether it's just YouTube. Just get your product, get your work out there so that you can get feedback. I think a lot of indie filmmakers just cannot get to this step. They always fall short. And I think that the people who make it in this industry, the production companies that make it in this industry, the indie filmmakers who make it in this industry are the closers. They're the ones that can take a finished product and upload it and get it done. Coffee is for closers. DBS closed this one, and we're pretty happy with how it was. I thought it was a pretty good movie. It was definitely better than I remember editing it. So, we're excited to get this one up, and we're excited to pretty much move on to the next project, which is Into the Forest.
I'm going to go ahead and add that little snippet review to the DVD cover. Brenda Renicki, pretty good. So with that being said, let's hop into our scene by scene breakdown. And that is starting off with what we always say is one of the most important scenes, and that is your intro scene. Nowadays, people will turn your movie off ASAP because they're typically potentially watching it on something that's free, like a Tubi or an AVOD service. So you got to make sure the intro hits. I will say this, if we go ahead and take a look at the intro, it is short and sweet, but that was not always the case. We were trying to actually do a longer form intro, more similar to the Whitlow House intro, which had a lot more lore, almost kind of multiple pop scares. We had a little bit of a fake pop scare at first, and then I actually went outside, and then I was like flashing a flashlight around there. Then I came back inside, and we basically pick up where we are now. So essentially, first off, I think one little cool note is, a lot of that's inserts. The sink dripping is an insert that we put in there. The phone or the alarm clock's an insert. So it just kind of shows again how crafty we are with putting scenes together. But basically, we originally had some noise woke her up. She goes out there, she sees me outside, she turns around, and I'm there. Pop scare. Then I go ahead, walk outside, see what's there. Nothing's there. I come back, I talk to her, and then we pick up. Now we decide on going ahead and cutting it. One, I would say when we did start filming it, it was a little like we were kind of like, all right, what are we doing? Like we didn't really plan it out and walk it out. And then two, we were doing a lot of the gore stuff. So I will say we pretty much rushed through this intro a little bit. And then I think the second thing is because we didn't have the, you know, real look at what we were doing with the Skinwalker like vision in that sense. I think you really needed that to hit for the intro for the long form. So that's kind of my reason and why I was like, okay, you know, let's do it. But at the end of the day, you got to make it move fast, and it moves really, really fast. Basically, she wakes up, she sees something move across the screen, she walks out. I get yanked into a room, and then that begins the whole process of basically seeing of a Skinwalker and Shapeshifter. And I will say, currently right now, of all the little snippets that we did, the intro scene is going viral on TikTok. And I think that just kind of shows you, you know, hey, it brings the action. There's immediate action with a pop scare. There's immediate action with another pop scare being pulled. And then there's a little lore reveal. And then there is another pop scare. So I think when it comes to intro, this is the definition of what a short and sweet should look like. What are your thoughts, Brendan?
I mean, I agree. I do think that short and sweet for most indie filmmakers is going to be a bread and butter. That being said, we did try to recreate the Whitlow intro, which I believe is our strongest intro in all of our movies. Absolutely love that intro because you have characters going through a creepy area, through a creepy house. They are describing the lore, so you're building lore visually, so you don't have to do it later on. And it ends in a climax, and you have sort of a slow build of tension in that you have sort of fake pop scares. It operates almost as an 8-minute short at the beginning of the movie. That being said, we haven't been able to recapture that magic. And we took a stab at it with this one. And, you know, with all the things that Kel said, it just was not coming together. And you can always tell a broken movie because it usually comes in an hour 10, hour 15. This movie is an hour 15. And you're like, oh, where is the last, 5 to 7 minutes? Well, this intro is supposed to be 8.5 minutes, and the director's cut, it's 8.5 minutes long. But nothing really worked. I thought the pop scares were just kind of they weren't very good. The lore building just was not very good as well. And just going outside and the way I shot it just was not very good. It was just a culmination of just errors, and the location that we're in was just being a little bit more difficult to shoot something in, and it just didn't flow. And the one thing you want to do is just make sure people watch your movies all the way through. And I tried so many different ways to really try and get this intro to be good, to cut together and make it look professional. And I just couldn't do it. So it came to the decision, after showing to a lot of people, the earlier cuts, the biggest feedback was the intro. Just, it wasn't very solid. It was messy. And, I felt the same way myself, which is why I kind of felt through this whole process, editing this movie, I wasn't as hyped up as I was with other movies. I felt that this one had a lot of problems that we had to fix. But going back and watching this movie now, I think a lot of it stemmed from this intro, which is very difficult to edit together. That being said, after watching this intro, after gathering feedback from the intro, this might be our most solid intro, if not the most solid intro. But it just goes back to, once again, editing. Editing is the most important skill that you have, because I think earlier Brendan, would have kept this in here. We would, if we were, working with another editor, they probably would have kept it in here. I think most indie filmmakers would have kept that in there, and it would have been very detrimental to the movie. I don't think it would have rated as high as it was now. So, understanding when to take the L's, make the cuts, and try and make it as quick and as fast as possible is a skill. It's something that we did. And, we learned not to do that stuff again. We can probably make a better Shapeshifter intro, a longer Shapeshifter intro if this one takes off and we do a 2.0 version. But really, I mean, moving forward, I think the biggest lesson for me was just keep it quick, keep it simple, 3 minutes long, get your audience into the movie, keep it mysterious, and just get someone killed like immediately. And I think you're in good shape. Anytime you kind of want to extend that, I do a lot of pre-production on it to really make sure everything's hitting, but I really think it's very, very difficult. And if you're a director or a producer that makes a movie that has a very long intro that works, kudos to you, because that's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the big thing it does kind of go back a little bit to pre-production, because I think of all the different scenes, like the original intro concept was actually really big. We had a split screen type thing where like basically you could see me and my body that we were trying to pull off. Like we were doing special effects with it too. And actually for the special effects, huge shout out to Tatum for not only being able to take out or to do kind of like a test work. So we're doing test work for Into the Forest on the eyeball scoop scare, and we're able to use that as the cut here. And I mean, I think me missing my eyeballs, having the pepperoni eyes as we call it, really steps it up. And I think it is a case of that, and it also goes down to, when you were telling me like, I think this intro is pretty long or whatnot, I was kind of feeling the same thing already, and obviously this is something where I was like, come on, let's get this intro. I want this to be a longer one. I think this will be good. I'm also an amazing star in this intro as well, too. But realistically, because of our experience, I knew right away the best thing to do was cut it. I was like, all right, we got to cut this. It moves it fast. And it, in my opinion, I would say that this is our best intro yet when it comes to what people are looking for in horror movies. I think our favorite is kind of the Whitlow house, but I think we have different tastes. And I think it always comes down to, are the people that are watching your movie going to watch the whole movie regardless, which is kind of like us and, DBS, or are they someone who's never seen this movie, aren't going to give you any kind of shot whatsoever? And within 2 minutes and let's see here, there's the pop scare from Sid, 2 minutes and 6 seconds. There's something out there. It's in this house. It's a shapeshifter because it was in that. So you have the base of the lore. Perfect stuff there. So that being said, we go into the second scene, which is, it's always fun because in our beats, we basically outline this a lot of like, hey, beat 1, intro, and then beat 2, character development. And I actually think, in looking back at past movies, this is something that's really impressed me with this one, is the amount of improvement that we have in a lot of the downbeats. I think if you look back at something like, an Unseen, which the character development was them like arguing and very slowly unpacking. If you look at like a lot of the other movies we have, these are just very slow character development scenes. And by us using multiple cuts in a 4-way conversation, you essentially establish each of these characters in the sense of what their roles are. Now, again, these are very basic horror roles. We're not inventing super deep, characters here. We're basically, hey, this is the popular one and his girlfriend, and these are the two that are kind of more introverted that are, tagging along. But it basically sets up the entire, position going into the movie. And on top of that, it's quick and there's a little bit of humor in it. So I think this is actually our best character development scene in the sense of, how quick it moves.
Yeah, so with the intro hook, the goals and objectives were to, show action, show a pop scare to show people that this is a horror movie, and then show them that there is a shapeshifter, and that's done through Kel being like, I killed it, and then you see his dead body, and then you see Sid pop out. That was all we wanted to do for the intro. For the second beat, which is the character development scene, all we wanted to do was make sure it's clear that these characters are going away for a weekend trip to a remote cabin, and then kind of develop the dynamics of the group. You have Ashley and Tom dating, where they're both, Tom's like the alpha, and then Chloe's the alpha female. And then you have like the two friends, which is Stephanie and Dylan. And you kind of want to build the awkwardness of almost being like a blind date or a forced date, a couple's weekend kind of thing. Cause that was like the awkward tension that we kind of want to pull in from the 70s and 80s. And shout out to both Dylan and Stephanie. I thought they both did a really good job building those characters, where it was like starting off very kind of awkward. And then at the end, the chemistry came together, which is exactly what we wanted to try and do. But that was just it. We really wanted to say, hey, look, here's a group of kids. They're going off to a cabin. You have the couple that's already developed, they've been dating for a while, and then you have the newcomers who haven't met. We want the social awkwardness to be there. And, I thought they did a great job. The quick cuts and the ability to speed up that conversation, because we easily could have lingered in there. You could have had 2 conversations with Tom and Dylan and one with Ashley and Tracy, and it could have been back and forth. And I think it would have slowed it down. But this is us learning, us knowing how to edit these scenes. And I really kind of took it from the murder house, where we were cutting in through Kel in the van and the others in the house. I took a lot from the scene where It was Kai talking to Kel in the van saying, how many views are we at? How do we keep them in the house? And we just kind of made those cuts. We just did it 4 ways, add in a little humor to show what kind of movie it is. It's a 70s, 80s horror movie. And this quick little scene, gives you as much as you need to know. So we talk about momentum and pacing. If you look at where you're at in this movie right now, it's a shapeshifter horror movie. There's going to be pop scares, and the character dynamics already, and we're not even at the cabin.
Yeah, I mean, again, really, really, I would say a flawless setup when you look at kind of the indie level of what's going to happen. There's a shapeshifter and there's this group and they're going out to the woods. So basically that gives us, what is that within? So yeah, that's a 1-minute character development scene. So you have 3 minutes, you know what's coming for them, you know who it's going to be, you know where they're going. And I mean, that's exactly what you want when it comes to pacing of the movie. So then we cut into our title sequence, which, quick shout out to that one. That's just spooky images over and over again, weird looking faces, flawless execution of that. Get to our classic, oh man, this cabin is great scene, which I think these are the little details that I think filmmakers don't think about real quick, is the scene of the car pulling up and them getting there and just establishing the entire scene. And this is something that's going to happen in every single movie. But what do filmmakers kind of think about? The action, the big stuff, the pop scares. Trying to figure out how you can make these flow is the hard part. And I think if you're not experienced with it, that's when you get the downbeats that really, really lag. And I think this is probably the slowest point of the movie, from when that car pulls up at about 4:40, and then until they meet Roger, which is going to come a little bit later at about 8 minutes. So, or about 10 minutes, actually. So it's about 6 minutes there of them getting there, experiencing it. And the way that we did it, the next scene, them walking in, we cut right to the shots real quickly. So there's kind of like a little quick banter. We're moving the scenes around. We're moving that. And then we have the fun joke of Dylan getting there. They both look at a room. He's like, I'll take the one down the hallway. He opens the door and it's a closet. And that, in my opinion, even like, we'll see if people think it's funny or not, that is what was missing from a lot of our downbeats before. We probably would have done like some weird lore thing maybe, or like a weird hold or something. We just kind of really moved smoothly through them, whether it's them walking up the stairs, quick cut to the shot to get momentum. Then from the shot to the momentum, Dylan has a little joke. And then from there, we kind of cut to them being like, hey, let's go ahead and walk. And then they're doing a montage. So you want to talk about that little chunk there, because I think in my experience indie movies die in the downbeats. Like, that's, at least for an upbeat, you're like, oh man, what's gonna happen, or oh, this is gonna be wild, or oh, this is gonna be crazy. When people are just sitting around talking, developing lore, as I use air quotes for it, it just sucks the life out of a movie.
Yeah, this is where a lot of indie films go to die. This is a huge pitfall, this little section right here, where it takes them forever to get into this house. It takes them forever to get set up. They do a ton of dialogue stuff. They do a ton of setting up the scene. They'll do maybe some lore stuff. And, you can go 10 to 15 minutes without another beat in there. And if you do that, people are going to turn your movie off. Unless you have really good acting and really good lore and really good dialogue, people are going to turn this off. And, from making all these movies, I understood that. I knew this is the danger zone, which is getting you to the next pop scare from the intro pop scare. It's always a very long process because you have to, develop lore, you have to develop story, you have to develop characters. You have pretty much 6 to 9 minutes to do this before you have to show the audience something scary, or you're just not going to have a good, well-paced movie. So this part right now for all indie filmmakers is by far the most difficult, because you really have to rely on just editing skills. And that's what we did. They came out and they saw the cabin. The only objective is just show the cabin and maybe have some dialogue saying, oh, there's no cell phone service, or it's difficult to call for help out here. They go up there, they make a quick joke about Tom not being really responsible. And he's like, I'm very responsible. Boom, shots. You kind of see some character development right there. Then we break the characters off and they have conversations with each other. So we're establishing the group dynamic. Again, you already know that Ashley and Tom are dating and Stephanie and Dylan are new. We go in there, and what does Tom do with Ashley? They already start flirting. They're comfortable with each other. We bring up the hot springs thing, which is a plot device later on in the movie, which we wanted to address earlier. And then we go to Dylan and Tracy, and it's the awkwardness of only having one bed, which I think just adds to the dynamic that we're trying to do. We go and show the room that is a janitor's closet, and Dylan takes the bed because he's a gentleman. Then we cut to them, trying to figure out what to do, which is just a seamless transition. The only point in that scene is to get them hiking so they can get scared by Roger later. So we don't have these crazy hard cuts, because we easily could have cut that. We could have cut the montage and they could have just been in the woods at night, but it's not as seamless as I think what we did. I thought we did a really good job showing they're here to party. They want to kind of go do some fun stuff. And then, I understand there's a lot of montages in this movie, but it's done for a reason. It's very difficult to make these downbeats hit. And if you're sitting there and you're having a conversation, the conversation doesn't hit, then you have to cut that and you're losing film time. Your movie's going to be even shorter. Or if you keep it in there, it's just not hitting very well or progressing the plot. It's very difficult to, you're going to lose everyone's interest. Montages are a very easy way to add just add the okras in there, have a nice fun song in there, and then a nice cinematic montage, which shows you put it on a gimbal and you float it around like that. Use warp stabilizer, and you can get something that looks very Hollywood, very cinematic. Yes, we do it a lot of times, but it moves the movie forward. You're showing that they're there to have fun. It looks good as a production standpoint, and they're very easy to edit and get to where you need to go. And then boom, we're at night, which is where we're going to get the first pop scare. So you're going from, I think, like 3 minutes, 6 or 7 minutes of, a very difficult downbeat scene to keep everyone's attention. And now we're back where we need to be, which is, getting the horror movie moving again.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you're defending yourself on the montages a lot. I don't think they're that much, in my opinion, because again, it's exactly what you said. A montage is just a more like action-packed version of a downbeat. It's just something that allows you to go ahead and basically move things along at a much faster pace. So with that being said, we basically, as you mentioned, we pick up with them out there at night, and we also have another little joke there. Tom's like, I can get us back. Boom, hard cut tonight. So that kind of establishes it. Then we give Dylan the role of being a gentleman and basically, saying, hey, I'm going to go ahead. I'll go out here and take a look at that. And I always say there's a balance of pop scares. I say there is passive and active pop scares. And essentially what I relate to that is a passive pop scare is something that is a pop scare, but it's not a threat. And this is your classic, and we've done this all through like the Hateful Eights, where it's like, bah, it's just me, I'm a person. I mean, go watch The Haunting of the Morgan Estate. It's like 90% Jake just standing behind the person, and that's the pop scare. And a lot of indie movies will do this, and I think it's something you have to do in the sense of it. We do it with Joe. We do it all the time. But with that being said, I really like this scare because it starts off with me in my pajamas running around. And it's almost kind of like, okay, I know that intro guy, so that could be the shapeshifter. So ideally, it's making dots connect for the viewer. And then it goes right into a gun being aimed at your face with Roger. So we introduce our Roger. And then on top of that, that's a pretty active passive scare in the sense of, yes, Roger at the end is like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry. But compared to just, oh my gosh, you bumped into me, I'm so scared, it's completely different than having a gun at your face. Because even that passive scare could become an active scare. So what are kind of your thoughts on how do you use those types of scares and how we executed it? Because I would say that's our best passive scare that we've ever done.
Yeah, and the passive scares are difficult too, because it has to be, scary enough that it keeps the audience engaged, but it either has to be something scary not related to the story, or it can't be too scary for the characters to just turn around and quit. Like if we showed Sid right now and an encounter with Sid that was really scary, that got a good pop, and then the group just stays, people are going to be like, if I saw something creepy like that, I'd leave. With Roger, he's defending his land. He's out there. It makes sense. It's a good pop scare. I do actually really like the scare before this. This is just kind of like a happy accident with Kel running through the flashlight. That one to me is scarier than the actual Roger pop scare. And I don't know, it's difficult for me to judge these movies because I've seen it so many times, but from the people I've actually watched this movie with, the quick darting of Kellen running in his pajamas is more of a pop than the Roger scare, which I thought was very interesting. That being said, from our fan feedback, the Roger scare was the highest rated scare in this whole movie, which I also thought was very interesting. So maybe I'm just not a fan of the Roger Pop scare, but I did think that feedback is super valuable. You'll see this scare again, and I can tell you what, the second time we did this scare, it is much, much, much better. I feel much better with it. It was actually so scary that I was editing the movie and my mom walked by from a room that was down the hall, and she even got scared from that. So if that happens, it's going to be good. So it's just another thing of like, you're learning from your pop scares. You're getting better each time you do this kind of stuff. But I do think the passive pop scares are very difficult. And I'm honestly struggling, even writing the Bigfoot one now, I'm struggling to find another passive pop scare that is not a hunter pointing a gun at somebody. But I think we executed it well. We're introducing seamlessly the Roger character into this dynamic. So like, you're looking at the objectives right now is to give the audience a pop scare to remind them that this is a horror movie. Then it's to introduce the Roger character in a seamless fashion, and is to progress the plot moving forward. So that we can get to the next beat, the next sequence. But we also did pepper in a little bit of horror in here and continue to build the lore of the shapeshifter, because we did see Kellen out there. Why is he out there? We don't know. We're building a little bit of mystery. And then we have the POV of the shapeshifter, which is kind of interesting, which kind of builds the lore, saying, look, this thing's out here watching us. And I really wasn't a huge fan of the black and white stuff or the grainy vision, but I didn't have anything better. And from the reviews now, it seems like a lot of people really like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting that we were able to do it. Kel's trying to take credit for it right now, but I'm pretty sure he told me to do like infrared or some predator thing. So
you didn't even want to do the POV. You were like, no one wants to see that. Everyone wants to see the POV.
He's taking credit for things that he didn't do.
It.
But I mean, like, just looking at it from a structure standpoint, I think it's very good. It moves the story forward. Now we're going to see who Roger is. We're going to see who Joe is. And that's just a little bit of lore building. But now you can kind of relax, because you just gave your audience what they wanted, which is to get scared, and we could set up the next scare. And I think we do in a very seamless, flawless fashion, which I really think, I'm so happy with the pacing in this movie and how we move from scene to scene. I think we've always struggled with just blending the scenes together without doing like hard cuts or the sunrises or the moon sets, like those kind of cheesy things. This one flows so well, and I thought we did such a very good job of just making sure we gave every little scene transition just a little bit more thought, and I really think it shows in the final product.
Yeah, I mean, I 1000% agree. The real takeaway here is the pacing, in my opinion. This thing starts going, and we've really kind of already hit the critical point, in my opinion. I mean, we kind of got over the little down beat of just kind of getting everything set up. We have the characters, we got Joe, we got Roger now. So you basically are introduced to essentially the entire spectrum of characters besides Officer Hawk coming later. But again, I think it's that 1-2 punch. You hit them with the pop scare, you get them a little bit of the lore development, and you kind of set it up, hey, don't worry, like, no one's out here but us. You're going to have to call us. So it also covers some of the issues of like, why don't they just call the cops? And why did they call Joe in the future? So all of these little things. Another one that came from this scene, we were trying to figure out why would you ever have Roger come back? And it makes sense in the sense of like actually having him show up and not be an active scare. Well, Tom asked for some moonshine. So little things like that. These scenes that we're breaking down that are basically the downbeats, every little sentence, which is just kind of like a little, just a little back and forth, can also be used to set up the plot later on. So then we go back to another montage. Oh my God, who just keeps throwing these things in there? But we basically have the card playing montage, which again, I think is absolutely fine, because that's exactly what they're here to do. They're here to have a good time. They're here to have a fun time. They're playing cards, they're drinking, and then they want to go ahead and make some s'mores. So I think the only thing for this one is, I remember filming this, just the s'more scene was our first scene. And like real quick, just a side tangent. I just remember it being like the clunkier of the scenes, just in the sense that we were like kind of shaking like the dirt off of it when it comes to like getting used to filming. But I just remember in the editing process, the s'more scene and them looking at Dylan was like the first thing. And like, I remember how long of a process it was to kind of get that done. And then just to like, now you see it there and it's like, let's see, okay, it's about 30 seconds of the film. So just real quick, what's it like kind of doing your first scenes and shaking off the rust before you kind of get into it?
Yeah, it was rough. We've gone into detail about the first day on this shoot. It was just not ideal. The only two scenes that we shot when we first got there, because it was such a struggle to get everyone shopping and set up and get, the internet trying to work. Um, it was just a mess. But we only shot that s'more scene where she's looking through the cabinet, and then those two looking down at Dylan. And it took like 3 hours to do all that stuff. So it was just not efficient at all. Um, but I mean, it worked. Like for this sequence, I would not do a montage here. I just think that the card playing scene, um, I can't remember exactly in the script if we had all these card playing scenes. I know we definitely had the Roger Pop scare, but this one I think was maybe improvised, and we put it in there because we really didn't have anything. I would have had them playing like another drinking game, but have their actual dialogue. So I think there is an opportunity here to have some kind of fun dialogue. And my goals, if I were to do this one again, would just be focus more on Tracy and Dylan kind of getting a vibe together, kind of, having fun and laughing and realizing like there might be some kind of chemistry there. I think we could do that very quickly, and I think it would add to the movie and develop their characters. Because I do think my only real big criticism with this movie, from my point of view, is that Dylan and Tracy's like character development doesn't really start going until like that photograph scene at the end, and it's really not all that strong to begin with. So I think we needed to kind of build them up a little bit more. This movie should have been more through Dylan's eyes, I think. And I think you would have had a stronger story. So I think right in here would have been a really good way to, kind of build up Dylan and Tracy's first kind of thing. You even had Dylan kind of doing like a magic trick he could have done, but we could have run it with actual dialogue in there. And I think you could have kind of done something pretty cool in there. The s'more stuff, quick, easy, get you outside, which is just a seamless transition. I love it hard cutting on the breaking sticks. I thought that's a really good edit cut point. So once again, like that was all planned in there. And we go back to writing as an editor. I'm writing that stick break scene in there because I know it's cutting on noise, which works out very, very well. It's a seamless transition. And it's also kind of funny because the girls are, holding all these s'mores and marshmallow stuff, and they're asking the guys to go pick up sticks, and they don't want to do that stuff. So there's kind of a look like, are you kidding me, to the camera? Hold, sticks break, and you're outside and ready to go with the next kind of pop scares.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. I think if we had just one little slight nod to like a chemistry being built there, because we basically address it in the sense of you have the sticks being snapped, and then it's basically Tom and Dylan, like basically Tom being like, "Yeah, you got this." And then we see Dylan, he wants to be the hero, make the fire work. So you have a good little setup in this scene. I really like the fire starting scene, which is what we're hopping into now. So again, they're breaking sticks, they're going out there. I like when he starts to light with just a lighter, and it's like, of course, that's not going to work. So then Tom goes back inside, and this is when you get the POV and you get the first Tom calling out. I think this is why the POV is really helpful, because again, attention is very limited. So unless you have something to really clearly let them know, even if it is just the kind of like the gray out screen, helps out a lot. But this is kind of, ideally to me, I wanted this scene to really almost make you think like Dylan was right about to get snatched before the light is on. And I mean, I think you kind of get that. But if you did, like, if you bumped up the creature side of things, I think you could, do a little bit more on the end. Is just my kind of personal thoughts with it. But again, limited budget, those things, like, obviously. But I think overall, building the tension, having the fire pop up, and then having the double scare of Tom being right there, it's again not the most dramatic pop scares, but enough to kind of keep your blood moving. I think it's a really good transition here, and I think it's solid. And that's from, we have them doing the s'mores up until 15. So basically, you had at 10-minute mark, you got the Roger scare. And at the 15-minute mark, you have the fire build up tension with basically the pop scares hitting within 3 minutes. So you're already kind of linking these sequences as you go.
Yeah, I think that this one it's solid. I don't think it's great by any means, but it gets the job done, which is, we're showing another pop scare or another tension moment. We're showing that's a shapeshifter because it's Tom calling out, and then you see Tom, right there. But to me, I don't know, it just doesn't it's all right. I think it gets the job done, but I don't think it's anything spectacular. I think we're kind of hurt that the fire pit was so close to the cabin and it was like well lit because you have the cabin lights and everything. There's no real sense of dread. If I were to do this one again, I would have put all the sticks and the fire stuff out there in the woods. And so yeah, you kind of lose the funny dynamic of Tracy and Chloe kind of like looking at Dylan, but I think you kind of get more tension, more horror because if he's out there by himself trying to light this fire in the middle of these woods, then you can kind of play with sound. You can have creatures like or sticks being broken and the creature in there kind of stalking him a little bit more through the trees. He could have just a flashlight to kind of use his to kind of look around. And so maybe he does see a couple things and kind of gets freaked out and then lights the fire, which gets the creature to go away. I think would have been a little bit cooler because just being in the woods at night is spooky with just a flashlight. I think this was just too to quote like Suicide House, there's just too many lights. It was too close to the cabin. It was too safe. But that would be the only way I would do that, or I would kind of maybe just try and find another scare to put in there. But this one, you can make something that's flat or doesn't hit, but it's not boring. Like something's happening here, which is good. And that's all you want as an indie filmmaker is to just, it could be good, it could be bad, but just don't be boring. And I think that this one, I don't think it was bad by any means, but I don't think it was, as solid as I think I had it in my head when I wrote this. And obviously, when you're shooting a movie, you got to work with what you got. And I think that was probably the biggest issue is that it was just too safe of a pop scare. You really wanted him to be in the woods because if you look at the stuff in the woods later on the movie, it's way scarier than this fire pit light scene. That being said, you do have some cool dynamics with Tracy and Chloe and then Tom. So there is some kind of cool stuff going on there. But the horror fan in me wishes it was just a little bit more intense. It was in the woods. And I think you could have really played up the stalking angle and like kind of what Kel said was he's right about to get snatched before he lights that fire.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on that same page too. It gets the job done, but it's nothing to really, hang the laurels on. That being said, it does have the fire element to it, which I think is, important throughout the lore. So it's the first time kind of establishing that, which again, we'll follow up on. That's going to go ahead and wrap up the first episode, though. We're going to pick up with the lovable Roger finding us right after this in the next episode. Again, we're going to do about 4 parts of this to really break down scene by scene. Be sure to take a look at The Force of Death online. It's on Amazon Prime. You can go ahead, rent it, download it, buy it, write a review. We would absolutely love it. It means the world to us. And as always, be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online because that is the place to be if you want to make movies, because we make movies for our fans, with our fans, so we'd love to have you there. But until then, have a good one.